Losing belly fat is hard, but it can be so much easier if you avoid these 5 frustrating mistakes. After helping clients get lean for over 20 years, I found that the truth about losing weight is not the fact that you have bad genetics, you don't have a slow metabolism, nor are you too old. Instead, there are a few hidden mistakes that keep you from getting under 20% body fat despite all your hard work. Mistake number 1 is an over-reliance on cardio. Doing cardio for fat loss is like trying to bail out water out of a sinking boat with a shot glass instead of fixing the hole. In fact, I never get an overweight person to run because it's literally the worst type of exercise for someone who is overweight and deconditioned. And here's why. First off, it's inefficient. You can spend an hour on the treadmill and burn a couple hundred calories that you can easily eat back in minutes. Second is counterproductive. Excessive cardio can actually burn muscle, making you smaller and also decreasing your metabolic rate. I've seen plenty of times when someone has used cardio as the main modality for fat loss, only to lose weight and also burn a ton of lean mass. Third, most people who are overweight are not equipped to handle long distance running. You have to have good gait, you need to have a good stride, and you also don't want to be carrying around a 20-pound weight vest on you while you're pounding the pavement. It's like expecting a rusty old car to win a Formula 1 race, and it's just going to break down over the long run. If fat loss is the goal, then we need to over-index on strength training and diet because these are the power tools, while cardio is just a weak band-aid. Mistake number 2, weight loss doesn't equal fat loss. One day I started working with a client, and before we started working together, we had them do what we call a DEXA scan. This is one of the most accurate ways to measure body fat and lean mass. Now, before working with us, he had dropped 20 pounds using cardio and dieting. And when we got the DEXA back, we actually found something shocking. 7 of those 20 pounds that were lost were in lean mass, which significantly reduced his metabolic rate. Even worse, his visceral fat went up as a result. And sure, you can lose fat fast by shedding water or even muscle in some cases through extreme diets, but that's just draining the surface. It doesn't really fix the real issue. The issue isn't the fact that you weigh too much, it's the fact that you have too much fat. As for my client, we focused on the things that mattered when it comes to losing fat, not weight. That meant having his protein intake at least 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight, and focusing on using progressive overload with strength training. And he ended up dropping 20 more pounds while also adding 3 pounds of lean mass and decreasing his visceral fat by 75%. By the way, we did a guide on the exact protocol that we use to help our clients remove the visceral fat from their bodies. You can check it out in the link in the description below. Mistake number 3 is too much focus on the little rocks. So a professor stood before his class with a jar. He filled it with big rocks and asked, "Is it full?" And the students said, "Yes." Then he poured in pebbles, which filled the gaps. "Is it full now?" And they nodded yes. And finally, he added sand, filling every space. It was at that time that the jar was full. Now, the lesson here is that if you start with the sand, there really is no room for the big rocks. In fat loss, big rocks are things like your calories, your macros, your strength training, your movement. These have to come first. Obsessing over tiny details like should you eat organic versus non-organic is like pouring in the sand before the rocks. If you're not handling the big rocks first and you're spending your time wondering whether or not your spinach is organic, you're missing the forest for the trees. Especially when we're trying to get under 20%, we need to focus on what actually matters. The rest is just noise. Mistake number 4 is the inability to control hunger. Controlling hunger for fat loss is like setting up guardrails on a winding mountain road. Without them, you're bound to crash. Most people think fat loss is just about eating less and moving more, but trying to white-knuckle your way through hunger leads to binging and failure. Instead, we want to find ways that help you control hunger, especially when you're in a calorie deficit. One of the ways that we do this is by volumizing your meals, which is to add extra fiber and cruciferous vegetables and to try to have you feeling fuller from your meals without having to add extra calories. We also want to create a schedule that puts your hunger on autopilot. For our clients, we have them follow a chrononutrition eating pattern, which means that we're syncing up your meal schedule with when you're about to go to sleep and when you're about to wake up. Usually, we want to have our final meal at least 3 to 5 hours before we go to sleep, and we want to have our first meal at least 1 to 3 hours upon waking. And we want to have our second meal somewhere in between. Lastly, we need to have a hard boundary for when we decide to stop eating. Especially when it comes to nights, a lot of the food choices you make after 7 p.m. when the sun goes down are going to get worse and worse because willpower just wanes through the day. If you don't control your hunger, hunger will control you. and it's going to be a losing battle every single time. And the final mistake is not understanding the phases of fat loss. Most people don't realize that fat loss comes in phases. The initial phase, we can actually do a lot of really cool things to lose fat fast, such as the 2-week protein modified sparing fast that I talked about in this video. After that phase, we're going to be going into a phase where we're developing a lifestyle of eating high-quality foods within your macronutrient and calorie intake while creating behaviors that include resistance training and walking and getting the right amount of sleep. These are the big rocks that we talked about before. And the final phase is the one I see a lot of people messing up on, which is the sustainability and optimization phase. This is the part where we've already lost the weight, and we want to make sure that we not only keep our results, but also optimize our health for better performance and also longevity. The biggest mistake I see people make is that they just leave themselves at fat loss. What we want to do after we lose fat is actually optimize our bodies to build more muscle, optimize our blood work to become healthier and possibly to live longer, and also boost performance. When people reach the goal, the thing that they always ask is, okay, what do I do next? And the biggest mistake that I see people make is that they choose the goal of maintaining, when the reality is that fat loss is just a phase. If we really want to get the most out of being under 20% body fat, we want to optimize the things that matter. Now, if you're trying to get underneath 20% body fat, I talked about the first phase, which is doing the 2-week protein modified sparing fast. This is definitely not for everyone, but if you are a somewhat healthy individual and you do have that excess weight to lose, it's a great way to start your fat loss journey. So go over here to this video where I talk about exactly how to do that and how to do it in a safe and effective way. See you there.